Good afternoon, and welcome once again to another episode of our series, Logistics with Purpose. This is an incredible time of the month for me, and I wish we would do this a little bit more often because it's really inspiring and exciting. And today we have an amazing guest, a great organization, 154 children fully nourished, 82,286 meals donated. But before we get into any of that, Kristi, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Enrique. I'm excited to be here and always excited when we get to talk to one of my friends. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And I think it's another great example of the creativity that people use to solve big problems in the world. So this is going to be a great conversation. I'm excited for everybody to be here and learn from Alice.
Very timely interview as well, as it's getting hot here in Georgia, and I'm guessing it's getting hot in other places as well.
Yes, it is definitely for those who are working from home or like to be outside or just like to be comfortable. Today's episode is going to be a good one for you.
This is their interview. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And so before we say hi to our amazing guest today, I just want to say thank you to the team at Supply Chain Now and Clay, Natalie, and everyone behind the scenes making this show possible. And as well to our audience, Maria, welcome. She's watching from PH. Rhonda Bompensa Zimmerman, also very good morning to you too. She's in hot Arizona, so this interview would be interesting to you as well. Sachini Bidari joining from Germany. Peter, as always, good afternoon. Yes, it's great to have you, and we'll look forward to this conversation and your active participation in it as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people joining as always. It's always so incredible to see people from all over the world kind of coming together to listen to this amazing guests and organizations that we're going to hopefully continue featuring here. Kristi, go ahead. Give us the honors of introducing our guest today.
Yeah, so today we're talking to my friend Alice Brown, also here with us in Atlanta, but shipping globally. And she is the founder of GoodSteps, who use, of all things, flip-flops to fight hunger. So I'm excited for everybody to hear from her and the creative solution she came up with. And she has a super interesting background that is atypical for a social entrepreneur. So she's done a lot of really amazing work here on a local level, but also working, of course, like many of our guests, on a global scale as well. But like I said, it's fun to see when people come up with really creative solutions to fighting big problems. And so using flip-flops to fight hunger is certainly, I think, in that category. So I'm excited to introduce everybody to Alice Brown of GoodSteps. Hi, Alice.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Alice. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm good.
Here. I'm so excited to see you. This is going to be so fun. And everybody needs flip-flops right now. We're going through a huge heat wave. So it's going to be really awesome for everybody to learn more about what you do and hear your story. And yeah, I'm thrilled to highlight your mission. So thanks so much for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. And I agree. Everybody needs flip-flops.
Everybody. And we have them both casually and a little bit dressier for those who are going into the office or having offsite meetings. Flip-flops are always a welcome sight. So I'm sure everybody will find a pair for them. But yeah, so before we get into GoodSteps and how you stepped out on purpose, please start us off and tell us a little bit about where you grew up in your childhood and kind of those early years in your life.
Sure. So I grew up in Alabama. In Huntsville, where the Space and Rocket Center is. Unfortunately, I did not know any astronauts, but yeah, I grew up and then went away to college in North Carolina, went to Wake Forest, and then ended up in Atlanta because I came to law school here. I went to Emory for law school and then met my husband and stayed put from there.
Yeah. So what did you study in law school, first of all?
So in law, I was thinking I was going to do litigation. So I was pretty focused on that. And then when I actually chose what job I was going to take, I ended up doing general corporate law for financial institutions. So I worked for banks and for REITs, like real estate investment trusts, and just big companies that were doing either M&A or securities work. And when I first came out, it was the banking crisis. So there was a lot of failing banks here in Georgia that we were helping out. So yeah, I did that for 6.5 years.
Wow, that's cool. All right, and then hello, we've got some other, Maria's joining us, Rhonda is here, Francois is here. Hi, Scott. So many good people. So if you have questions along the way for for Alice about either GoodSteps or herself, then please put them in the chat and we'll try and make sure she answers those questions as well. But I know Enrique also had some questions about your background.
I have tons of different questions, and I'm just super excited to have Alice here. And we're talking the backstage before this live stream, and it's a pleasure to getting to know you. And tell us, because I feel like there's a lot of things to kind of explain. From how do you go from legal, corporate, lawyer, banking, and finance into such an amazing organization? Tell us a little bit more about like your story in the earlier years. Did you always wanted to be an entrepreneur? Did you always kind of foresee yourself as someone that could turn flip-flops into a purpose-driven organization?
No. No, as you can imagine, as a lawyer, we are a fairly risk-averse group. So that was sort of my path, was, study. My parents were both worked hard. And so I just always was focused on finding that career path that was going to be stable and, I could always fall back on. And I worked really hard at it, worked at a big law firm, which means a lot of hours put in. But as I sort of was growing up, all these companies started popping up that had a social mission. And as a consumer, I loved it. And I, sought them out. If I heard that a company had some sort of give aspect, I bought it, whatever it was. I mean, I had quite the collection for gifts: nail polish, shoes, shirts, scarves. If I found it, I was all on board. So when I, sort of throughout my law career, again, you're just working such long hours, and to be putting in that much work, I just slowly started thinking, if I'm going to be working this hard, I kind of want to be working this hard towards like something other than, it was good work, but it's just for something bigger. So I finally made the leap when I had my first child. I have 3 kids. When I had my first child, it was like, okay, if there's ever going to be a time for me to take control of my schedule, first of all, and second of all, spend my work time creating good, or, feeling like there's a bigger meaning behind my work, this is the time. So I sort of came up with the concept of the company first. Like I knew I wanted to create a company that would provide sustainable funding for nonprofit partners. And then once I knew I wanted to do that, I sort of came up with flip-flops because everybody has them. It's sort of universal, both genders, all ages. It's something that everybody does anyway. And then sort of researching the market, it seemed like there was some elasticity there. There would still be a demand for another brand. And so then it was the learning process of like, okay, I know everything, or not everything. I know a lot about law. I knew nothing about manufacturing and shoe design. So then just sort of jumping into that whole process, the development process took a solid 2 years before we were able to launch. So
when did you finally launch GoodSteps?
We launched in August of 16.
Nice.
Of 2016, which, I mean, it's not really the best timing, again, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, but just for the logistics of getting products from a manufacturer to us, we obviously would have preferred to launch in early spring, like before the whole flip-flop season, but we finally got the shoes and it was like, I'm launching even if it's the end of the season.
That's great. And of course, very brave in a very kind of entrepreneurial way, right? I think that everyone kind of feels similarly, or at least I related to your story when you said, well, maybe we could be doing something different. And since we're working incredibly long hours anyways, why not? So I'm pretty sure that a lot of people out there are relating to your story so far. Is there like any particular story from your upbringing, either in Alabama or North Carolina, that gave you some hints as of the entrepreneurial career path that you were going to choose at some point, or something that kind of shaped your views as of why giving back, why making a positive impact is important, not only to you, but to the world these days?
Well, I think from my early childhood, it was really just seeing my parents work really hard. My mom was an audiologist and my dad was a psychiatrist, and they put in a lot of hours, and they were just passionate about what they did because they felt like they were really helping people. So it was a different sort of helping people. Right. They were it wasn't like a give per se, it was their actual job. So I think I just always had that idea that I would love for what I did to help people like directly. And then sort of realizing that in law, you are helping companies, which is helping people, but it's not really helping people directly. And then my husband and I took a trip towards the end of my law career. We went to Africa for 3 weeks, and it wasn't a trip. It was a fun trip. It wasn't like meant to, change anything, but just seeing, we went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And so we were in Tanzania, and just, you couldn't help but notice sort of the need all around you. Wow. It was, I don't know, not surprising because you obviously already know that, but it was just a very large juxtaposition from my day-to-day life of helping these big corporations, and then seeing sort of day-to-day lives of people who are struggling to have their most basic needs met. And so I think that just, the two of those together just sort of engendered in me an interest in like, how can we all do what we're doing, but like do it in a way that's better for everybody, like actually helping people while still, maintaining our normal lives, and just always having that in the back of your head. Like, how can you do your everyday life and also help people?
Yeah. What was it like climbing Kilimanjaro? I would assume you felt like you could do basically anything. Starting a business was small after that.
Right.
It was definitely a bigger challenge than I understood going in. I think my husband understood it a little bit better, but it was very hard. And we did it in 6 days, and
oh, wow.
it was a journey, to say the least. Yes.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah.
It was an accomplishment, but everyone asked if my kids ask if they should do it. I would say absolutely not. It was a lot more dangerous than I anticipated, I guess. But overall, a wonderful experience. And like you said, a challenge that you're certainly glad you did after the fact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Charles made a great comment about purposeful purchasing feels like a good direction for retailers to take. So yeah, we completely agree with you, Charles. So Alice, let's talk a little bit about, I guess first a little bit more, because there are probably not a lot of lawyer turned social entrepreneur that sells flip-flop stories out there. It's not one of those true movie formulas that we're familiar with. So talk a little bit more about just, I guess you talked a little bit about feeling good about what you did, but a little unfulfilled on the purchase side. But so besides now as an entrepreneur, especially manufacturing, sourcing, all of that stuff, you're really great at reading contracts.
Yes, got that.
Some of the other like skills, I guess, that you now maybe looking back didn't really see how they would translate, but are now coming in so helpful, and how having that law background has really helped you as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think you nailed it. Like the most helpful part certainly has been like contract negotiation, and just making sure that sort of the corporate side is buttoned up, creating a corporation, sort of all of the things that go around it, trademarking our name, all of those things certainly felt more natural. And then I think just sort of the mindset of corporate America has both helped and hurt, I think, because, on a big firm side, you respond quick, like time is money, like you respond quickly, you get things done quickly, you try to be as efficient as possible, you're organized, all of those things help when you're running a business and you've got all the different things that you have to take care of, rather than like if it was just dealing with the manufacturer, that would be easier. But obviously then you also have to do social media marketing and PR and, all the other buckets. You sort of have to manage all of them. And just time management, I feel like you can get sucked in as an entrepreneur. You can get sucked into a 24-hour-a-day job. And having already done that at a law firm, I feel like I appreciated the ability to not have to do that as an entrepreneur. When you work for yourself, you have to sort of self-regulate and say, you know what, I don't actually have to stay up all night and do this because it's on me. And so I think that has been very beneficial.
Yeah.
Peter joining us from Kenya. Again, we have people from all over the world. I'm pretty sure like the Kilimanjaro story kind of resonated with him. Peter, thank you so much for joining us again. Charles as well, and Mohamed. Seifel, and I probably butchered the way that your name was pronounced, but thank you for joining as well this conversation. Alice, so you kind of have talked to us a little bit about, you already walked us through the first steps of GoodSteps. I guess no pun intended there, but you mentioned a little bit about you and how caring and kind of how driven by companies that have some kind of purpose, and you are a consumer. We all are consumers, and you kind of feel that strength of deciding what to buy and what to do with your money. It's important. So now you mentioned that everyone wears flip-flops, and that's why you decided on the flip-flops. But if you could tell us a little bit more about that story, because at the end of the day, I would love to understand a bit more some of those brainstorming sessions when you knew that you wanted to leave, you knew that you wanted to start something that would help others more directly. What other potential projects were you considering, and why, other than the fact that everyone wears flip-flops? And I think it's a brilliant idea. How did you end up with that one in particular? And then tell us a little bit more about the naming process too.
Well, so interesting. Flip-flops is actually the first idea that I came up with, and it felt right, it felt good, but then I put it aside and I tried to think of like bigger and, is there something else I'm missing? You go through the typical iterations of, well, everybody has t-shirts, or, but there's a lot of things that a lot of people have that are easy to replicate. Everybody can print a t-shirt, or,
right.
There's just a lot of products that I felt like either would get lost in the mix, or just weren't, you only need so many scarves or whatever it was. And so it just felt like shoes were the right fit, and they're not fast fashion. They're not something that they're going to go out of style, or that I would have to flip over a lot, restyle over and over. It's just sort of, it's a consistent product, I guess. Mm-hmm. So then once I was thinking that might be a good fit, I started talking to just as many people as I could possibly talk to, connecting with them through friends of friends, through LinkedIn, through everywhere I could think of, just sort of trying to figure out all the negatives that I didn't know about, like just to make sure I was informed before I just jumped in there. I mean, I didn't even know how you go to a manufacturer. Do I have to sew a shoe and be like, can you make this? Like, I have no idea. I don't know how to make a shoe. So just sort of, it was a bumpy road of just talking to people, and then they would say, oh, you should talk to this person and this person. And eventually I found my way to my shoe designer, who is amazing. And that was one of the best decisions I made with hiring him. He's in Vancouver, but anyway, we just hit it off, and he has been super helpful along the way. But so once I started that process of like figuring out what I actually wanted the shoe to look like, again, making it as universal as possible and as versatile as possible, but also stand out on its own. Well, that's another reason I picked shoes actually too, is because I wanted the product to stand on its own. I love a social enterprise, but if your product isn't good, you're really only selling the story, and that can only take you so far. So I wanted the product to be, just as good as it could possibly be, so that even if the story doesn't resonate, or nobody, if they don't even know about the story, they just like the flip flop on its own sake, for its own sake. So, so that's how I sort of honed in on flip flops, and that was my idea about sort of how to make them stand out, not just the story. The story was the reason for them existing, but I wanted them to be good on their end. And then the naming process, I actually was going to do a post about this. I came up with we just, my husband and I, my friends and I, we just brainstormed constantly, and, had some hilarious ones that I loved. And then, then the .com wouldn't be available. And then I'd find another one, and then I talked to people, and then like, oh, of course, that makes so much. I was able to snag the .com, which was the biggest, the biggest part of the puzzle to me. And then we just went from there, but it took a while to get there. But as soon as I heard it, it was like, oh, of course it's GoodSteps.
It has a great name. Yeah. Great name to it, and a good story. And a lot of younger people listen to this live streams and episodes of Logistics with Purpose. Is there like anything that you would like to kind of suggest to them if they're kind of entrepreneurs at heart, looking for a product, looking to launch something? Given your experience and what you've learned throughout this whole process, what would you tell those kind of young entrepreneurs, or even young at heart entrepreneurs that are out there and want to do something?
Everyone, find anyone about their experiences, just so you don't go into something without really knowing your market, knowing, sort of everything that you need to know before going in. I feel like that helped me immensely. Just so it's like anything, you got to do your research. Before you buy a car, you research it. Before you make big life decisions, you research it. Just talk to everybody. I mean, even people that might potentially be your future competitors. I just feel like if you go into it with I'm not just taking from you. Like, I think you're like, tell them why you're reaching out. Like, I've always respected your brand. I think you're doing an amazing job at XYZ. I'd love to, ask you these 3 specific questions that I have about the process, or something like that. Nobody wants to get an email that's like, can I pick your brain over coffee? They're like, who are you? I'm busy. I don't have time for that. But if you're specific and you explain exactly why you're reaching out, I feel like 9 times out of 10, people are so happy to talk to you about it. So that's my main advice, honestly, is just talking to everyone so that you know if it's a good fit before you dive in.
Yeah, that's a really bold move too, especially to talk to competitors or people. There's a lot of times we also make assumptions. They're probably too busy. They won't reply. I can just Google this. So I think there's also some of that grit that comes with starting a company, that even just comes through that research process of, being willing to reach out and ask those hard conversations, or have those conversations and ask hard questions, even if it's somebody you think could be competing with you on some level, and just seeing if they'll respond. So I think that's really
to that point though, I feel like that was part of my advice though, is to make sure you, like, if it's a readily available question on Google, like, definitely look at that first, come prepared so that they understand why you're coming to them, not just like, hey, I want to network with you or whatever. I feel like that's always appreciated. Like, oh, I've looked and you've done this, and I had another question about that I couldn't find, or something to that effect. But
yeah. And then let's talk about too. I want to hear more. We talked about the flip-flops. We talked a little bit about how you came up with those, but there's so many big issues in the world, so many things to tackle, so many causes to choose from. So how did you end up focusing on hunger, and then also the 2 charities that you ultimately decided to go with, as well as for the social impact piece?
Right. So you're right. There's so many ways you can go. And I mean, the very first step is I just wrote down a list of like things that if I had a magic wand that I could fix, and they're huge. So you're like, okay, cancer, like water, everyone needs water, food. And ultimately decided on food, because to me, food and water, it's like, if you don't have that, then you can't fight disease. You can't, there's so many other issues that you can't, even address if somebody doesn't have their most basic needs: food, water, shelter. And then food just felt particularly like impactful to me, especially as I was having kids. I couldn't imagine not being able to provide them with just basic nutrition. When I started researching all the, the number of malnourished children in the world, it was just shocking to me that not even basic nutrition, So I ultimately honed in on hunger. And then from there, there's a bunch of websites, and I have a friend who's in the nonprofit world who, where you can sort of search out organizations based on how they spend their money, sort of the success rate, if you will. There's like a metric for, how the money is being spent, whether they report how they spend their money precisely, sort of all the ways where you can follow your money basically when you donate. And then then it got down to a shorter list. And so then it was, I think we should have a local option where you can see the impact in your local community. And that's how I ended up on Atlanta Community Food Bank. And they're also really transparent about how they spend their money and where it goes. And there's tons of volunteer opportunities, which I really liked. And then Manna Nutrition, they primarily or 100% give their little RETS packets, nutritional packets, are given around the world to directly treat malnourished children. A malnourished child needs 3 of those a day for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they're fully nourished, and they, so it completely reverses, and they can go forth from there. And I think the stat is like, once they're fully nourished, and once a malnourished child is fully nourished, it's like 90% of them don't become malnourished again. So you really do just sort of change the trajectory of their health and their life. So Manna is based in North Carolina, but they actually manufacture their packets in Georgia. So there felt like there was a connection there. But then the customer would have the option between, do I want my money to go locally and help food insecure people here in Georgia, or do I want to focus on kids abroad? So the customer could sort of pick their passion, if you will.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show, and then of course you and I have talked previously just about we've, as I said, you can buy sometimes throughout the year, you can buy a Subaru and choose your charity or where you want to give back to, but to see it on such an entrepreneurial solopreneur at such a small company level is really cool, to be able to put that power back into people's hands and back to that purchase power that, the power that we each have every day. It's such a special and unique thing. And also just talk a little bit more about you were talking about earlier, the profit model and how you choose your percentage on giving back and all of that kind of thing too, because that's also unique.
Purpose of the company is to support our nonprofit giving partners. We give 100% of our post-operational profits to these partners. And so, the way that works out is approximately 20% of the purchase price of every item sold. And so the customer, we are only online. And so the customer goes online and picks their products. And then as they're checking out, they decide which giving partner they want to donate to. And then we make a quarterly donation, add up all those, purchases and make a quarterly donation to each of our giving partners, which is basically the whole idea. We're a for-profit company, but the profits go to charity. So it's similar to a nonprofit, but our hope is that it's basically like a sustainable source of income for these nonprofits, so that, it's just always turning over cash instead of a one-time donation or something like that. So it's our whole purpose is to give people the power to do good. I think, like you said, even when you're doing a purchase as, small as a flip-flop, that adds up. If 200, 1,000 people who were going to buy flip-flops elsewhere bought flip-flops with us, that's making a difference. Every little bit, every decision people can make in their lives can make a difference depending on how they do it.
Yeah. And you're very transparent about highlighting the numbers directly on your website and showing what your impact is, and allowing people to see the change that they're making too. So that's really important and amazing that you do that.
Yeah.
We thought that was, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alice.
I was just going to say that is really important to me personally, just as a person, as we were talking about earlier, as a consumer, for, as someone who loves social impact companies. As I've gotten more into being on the business side of it, it's really important to me to be transparent about what we do with the money and how, and just being very open about all of the back end part of that. Because when a company says we're a social enterprise, we give, money to XYZ, that you don't really know what that means. That could mean they give a penny. That could mean they give a lot. You just have no idea. And I don't want it to ever be unclear what we're doing. This is not marketing. This is why we're here.
Absolutely. Just and what you said is very powerful, and it kind of stayed with me. Give people the power to do good, because on top of everything that you're saying, you're also letting the consumers, because you went through that and you bought and purchased products from companies that you believed in, you're giving that choice to your consumers. So that's really, really smart, and that's something that Charles also seconds. Alice, very insightful to have to sell more than just a story. Charles, thank you so much. Rhonda kind of doubles down on that as well. Like you have not only a great purpose and a great mission, but at the end of the day, as you mentioned it yourself, the flip-flops are high quality, great products. If you're going to buy a flip-flop anyways, why wouldn't you buy one that's not only incredibly comfortable and well designed, but one that will then give back to people. Francois, thank you so much for your question. And Alice, this question for you. So, and you briefly mentioned this before, but in particular to the developing or the sourcing. And I know that I think you're sourcing and manufacturing some of these in Brazil as well. How do you learn about the product? And Francois, thank you so much for that question.
Well, it was definitely a process. As I mentioned, that first production, I was very green. So that was initially why we ended up going with a developer here in the US who had a relationship with this factory in Brazil, so that they could sort of help us walk through the process, which was still bumpy even with that experienced person, just because I was very particular about what I was willing to accept and not accept in terms of quality and color and everything. I think, you know, now looking back, going through this process again without the US liaison help, I think the process is always going to be bumpy. That's the story of manufacturing and sourcing. But, you know, I think I basically learned by doing is the
Trial
short
and error.
answer. That's right. That's right. And just basically sticking to my guns. I think, you know, it was a long process, which I'm sure was as painful for the manufacturer as it was for me, but it was important to me that I got it right. And so I think they eventually got that and we got the product right, but it is a process.
And you mentioned that you launched in 2016, correct?
That's right. Yes. So we are about to be 5 in August. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And we are in the process of launching kids shoes for the first time, which is exciting. Which you guys, Vector, actually, I believe is going to help us get the shoes to America when they're ready, if and when they're ready.
Well, count with our support for whatever you might need. And Francois, thank you very much for that question as well. I guess trial and error, make a lot of mistakes, be brave, keep pushing. Stick
to your guns.
Stick to your guns, and as Alice has done, and that's just, there's no magic bullet, I guess, right? When it comes to
unfortunately,
this,
no.
you just have to go and do it and learn and talk to a lot of people that have done it in the past. Right. Charles, a lot of comments. Kim as well. Kim Winter, welcome to the show as well. Thaisar from Singapore, welcome as well. And at this point, we have an amazing audience, and I'm not going to be able to read every single comment, but I want to thank the audience for participating. And I'm actually going to call out a couple of you guys, Peter, Kim. If you guys have any questions for Alice Brown, please send them on the text. Alice, going back to supply chain and logistics for a second, and I was thinking about, like, now after the pandemic, 2021, any big challenges, any big problems that you have kind of faced? And I'm sure you have many, but one in particular they want to share with us, and what do you learn from it? How do you solve it?
Well, this year has been obviously interesting for everyone. Luckily, because we are so small, it's just me. We haven't had as many, there haven't been like office or workplace issues related, but like I mentioned, we were working on kids' shoes, and that production has certainly been slower as a result, because Brazil was hit hard with COVID as well. And so just sort of trying to navigate when to be patient and when, to sort of push a little bit, because, it's hard to tell from afar when that is a real factor and when it's not, when they just aren't moving ahead. And so I think that's been a big challenge, is just to sort of figure out when there are real reasonable delays and when there are unreasonable delays being blamed on a totally valid reason. So I think that has been the biggest challenge on my end, because as I mentioned, the manufacturing process is slow to begin with, and then you throw in something as complicated as a global pandemic. You certainly have to adjust expectations, but you also have to make sure things are moving when they can be moving. So I think that has been, and it continues to be, honestly. When are we sort of moving out of the pandemic related issues, when they're, it's a hard thing to manage until, I guess, everybody is vaccinated and we can all go back to normal. It's just difficult to know especially when I can't be there on the ground in person at the factory, seeing firsthand whether this is really affecting XYZ or not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Especially, and you pointed out, like, we in the US, I think, are blessed in so many different ways, but there's different countries that might be trailing behind a little bit on the vaccination front. They're still having new COVID outbreaks. And so you're absolutely right. It's been definitely a challenging year for a lot of companies. I would say most companies out there, in particular for, I guess, your company trying to bring on a new product, new launch from Brazil when they're being hit by COVID. That must be real challenging for sure. Anything else on the supply chain, or just in general? Like, tell us a little bit more about how your company and organization went through such a difficult year during the pandemic, and what you learned from your skill sets and some of the things that you think that you'll need to get better at going forward.
Well, to your first question, sourcing is just generally an interesting process when you're not a big organization, because we do fairly small production runs. Luckily, they have smaller minimums in Brazil than some other larger manufacturing outputs. But sourcing can become difficult because they basically source the exact amount that you need for one production. So if I come back in a year and I'm like, these were really popular, I'd like to make these again, they may have to start over on the sourcing, which is difficult then to, have the same product with new materials. So that's going to be an ongoing challenge until we can just, do bigger runs, I think. But even then, it's just, particularly with leathers, they make a batch and they dye it, hand dye it exactly how you want. And then if everyone loves it and you sell it, then it's like, oh, now we got to make it again, but it's never going to be exactly the same. So you just have to sort of know that and just generally try to get close again. But especially on kids' shoes, if you can imagine, so that they're so much smaller, you need so much less of all the materials. So it's a challenge to get suppliers to agree to give you, the amount that you need, or you just have to buy so much and hope that it sells so that you can make more of the exact same color and, style. So it is an interesting learning process, as to sort of balancing. You either pay more for less, or you kind of gamble and buy more, hoping that it's the right mixture of color and texture and everything else. But as far as COVID itself, so when everything sort of shut down in March of last year, the food bank in particular was immediately, the demand for their services went up exponentially, because people's jobs were furloughed, everything, schools were shut down. A lot of kids get school meals. So for the first 4 months of the pandemic, we doubled our give, so that we were giving 40% of every sale to our two giving partners, just to try to do our part in making an impact. So it is, the food bank has really stepped up. They've, I don't even know the numbers, but they've tripled or quadrupled the number of food that they distribute around North Georgia. And there still are. They expect to continue to be in high demand for a little bit longer while everyone gets back to work and everything. So, it just affected everybody. It was a no-brainer to me. If we're trying to help people fight hunger issues, and suddenly hunger issues are much bigger issues, it was like, we'll just do what we can and give more then.
Wow. Congratulations. There's really no other way of saying it. This is amazing. Like, when everyone else was struggling, when everyone else was kind of trying to shy away from investing in their companies and their futures and whatever, you basically literally doubled down double down the help in the hopefully one of the worst years that we've seen in history of humankind. So this speaks volumes of the kind of company and the purpose and how committed you are to not only the product itself but giving back. Good question here. Well, we have plenty of good questions. So the one that I'm going to ask you comes from Charles again. Are returns a big issue for your product line?
We have been lucky, and knock on wood, we have not had many returns, which is great. I don't know if it's just a result of my shoe designer's excellent design, but we really haven't had a big issue with that. The more that we sell, obviously, you get more returns, but it's few and far between. And we have a very detailed fit guide on our website, which I always send people to if they email a question about fit. You can actually print it out and stand on the printout. I'm like, it's very clear.
You can't mess it up.
Yes. I'm like, just put your foot on it and you can see right there whether it fits or not. I think the hardest part about flip-flops is that typically there's no half sizes. So that, I would say that accounts for most of the returns. If someone's a half size, they just don't know whether to go up or down. And often if they go up or down and they should have gone up or down, down or up, then that might be their problem. But for the most part, we've been really lucky on that.
But you usually should go up, right? What's the fashion advice for someone that doesn't know about how to buy flip-flops? Always go bigger?
Mostly always go bigger, with the exception of if you have a really skinny foot, I would go down one size, because we also have memory foam that will sort of settle a little bit. It doesn't stretch, it just sort of settle in a little bit. Which feels like it's giving you a little extra space. So it's really foot length as opposed to anything else.
There you go.
Which again, print out your fit guide. You can stand right on it.
I have another question from Kim Winter. Hey, Alice, joined the show late today. As Enrique knows, I'm CEO of not-for-profit Oasis Africa, Freedom from Poverty Through Education, 8,000 kids educated in 15 years. And what's your tip for other folks wanting to start a non-for-profit? I'm always asking the question, give advice where I can. Interested in your tip. Thank you, Kim, for the question. And also thank you for everything you do in Africa. It is amazing, and how much impact you're having as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a hard one. I think, again, it goes back to research. It's sort of, and also think small. So you're not going to found a nonprofit or a social enterprise and cure cancer tomorrow, or give $3 million tomorrow. You need to start with, okay, if I could help one person, if I, like in your instance, if I can educate one child, what do I need to do that? And then if that's successful, okay, I want to do 2 kids, and then I want to do 3 kids. And you sort of, I think you just got to start and think small. Well, you can always have huge goals. Like that's the dream. Like I would love to eradicate hunger, but in the interim, you need step by step to have doable goals. And then also just picking something that you're passionate about, so it doesn't become tiresome, or if you're passionate about it, then you're going to put in the work, and the little bumps in the road aren't going to deter you. So I think that would be my advice, is to think small while dreaming big, and also do your research as to whether it's sort of something that can carry on and not just be, it's something that's sustainable, I guess.
Yeah. And along those lines, I think you've talked a little bit about the term social enterprise, and not everyone may be familiar with the term social enterprise. So if you want to speak to that just a little bit, as well as you probably, like a lot of people out there, even to Kim's question, do I go nonprofit or for-profit and support a cause? And how did you come to the decision of going for-profit to support nonprofits, and just figuring out the social impact company side versus a nonprofit side?
Right. Okay. So the reason we decided not to do a nonprofit is basically because we are not experts in this fight against hunger. There are many people who are, and there are already so many organizations doing such great work with their feet on the ground, already in the fight. So I didn't feel like I could do better than they could coming into this game in 2016. So to me, it just made sense to be a for-profit and to just basically get as much money in these people's hands, these experts' hands, as I could, to help them do what they do. And as far as a social enterprise, I mean, to me, that's what a social enterprise is. It's like, they may not give all of their profits away like we do, but it's a company whose main mission, or at least a large part of their mission, is to give back, whether that's give money to nonprofit giving partners, whether that's being sustainable or ethically produced, or supporting employees, through this work, or whatever. Basically just having a cause bigger than making a profit, but they are for profit.
Yeah.
And I forgot you had a second part of the question.
No, you did great. Just in case, I know some people are still unfamiliar with the term social enterprise, which we've tossed around a little bit. So I wanted to make sure that was clear, and then just further understand how you decided to go for profit versus nonprofit. So no, that's fantastic. And what was just in case anybody's wondering or wanting to start their own project, what was the website you used earlier when you were talking about being able to track giving and results and figure out which organizations you wanted to support?
I would have to double check that.
Yeah.
I think it was Charity Tracker, I believe, but there was several, and the friend that I have that's in that business, she's in a consulting business, a business that specifically advises corporations on how to choose their charity. And she directed me towards it. I can follow up with you.
Yeah, we can post it on the notes.
Okay, great.
When we kind of launch again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
And then hopefully a question that more people are asking, like Jose here, is how do people support your vision? Where do they go to support you? And if they have some hot feet right now or want their toes to breathe, where are they supposed to go?
That's awesome. Well, you can go to our website. It's www.goodsteps.com. And we're on Instagram too, at GoodSteps. But basically, getting the word out is huge. Obviously, we'd love for you to buy flip-flops. We think everybody needs them. Yes. But getting the word out, and we're basically 100% word of mouth at this point. So that is our best method of marketing. And we love working with companies. We've had a couple of customers who have decided they own enough flip-flops that have basically bought however many flip-flops, 50 or whatever, and then ask that we find somewhere to actually donate the flip-flops. So then you get like a double give sort of situation, where we found a women's shelter in Atlanta that needed shower shoes, basically. And so he got to donate a lot of money to Manna Nutrition, and then we got to donate a lot of shoes as well. So it was like everybody wins, scenario, which was great. And just for those who don't love flip-flops, which I can't imagine there's many, but we have shirts and hats.
There's something wrong with those people. Please.
Yeah, I'm sorry if that's you.
Disconnect right now and find something else. Yeah.
That's right. But we do have cozy t-shirts, and we have kids shirts for, while you're waiting on our kids' shoes. So we have other items as well. Or you can just donate directly to the food bank or Manna Nutrition. They always would be happy for that as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Kristi, thank you so much. Alice, this has been incredible. We're wrapping up this amazing show. It's been really, really nice talking to you. It sounds that you have everything, you've done everything in a very smart and caring way. So we're going to be definitely not only supporting you, but cheering for you and GoodSteps as you continue to grow this into a world brand, I'm sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me, and I appreciate what y'all are doing as well. Getting the word out is half the battle.
Yes.
We'll definitely push for that, and then we'll have our audience to thank for that as well. Maria has another quick question for you. See if we can kind of get it in. What is your company's strength over your competitors?
I think our strength right now is that we are smaller than our competitors, and I mean, they're focused on the bottom line, which we are as well, but it's not our bottom line. It's our nonprofit partners' bottom line. So I feel like that is more motivating, at least to me, than, a monetary profit in my pocket. So I think that's a strength that, it's just more motivating to me. Plus, I think it resonates with consumers. And I think our products at the end of the day are also as good or better than theirs.
Absolutely. And Mohib, thank you once again for joining us. Very supportive as well. Every good step eradicates hunger. That's quite a message for any kind of purpose-driven customers out there, like we all are here. Kristi, what was your favorite part of this interview as we kind of wrap it up? Anything else that I might have been missing?
Like I said at the beginning, one of my favorite things in having these conversations with people is just there's so many big issues, like Alice talked about: hunger, water, health, nutrition, poverty. There's so many different things to tackle, and we all have different issues that resonates with us. And I just love how Alice was able to hone in on an issue that meant something to her and figure out a very tangible way to solve it. And I'm personally a big fan of the social enterprise model because it is an amazing intersection of cause and commerce. And, we can use and we can sell things that we buy all the time and wear every day, like flip-flops, and also use them to fight big problems. So the creativity behind that, the messaging, as Mohib pointed out, everything is just this beautiful kind of intersection and overlap to where it's something we need, but it also gives back. And it was terrific to hear how Alice found a way to do that and the creativity used in solving such a big problem like hunger.
Absolutely. And thank you once again, Alice. Thank you very much to the audience. Maria says, great answer. Sends hi to everyone as well. Thank you. That's been a really interesting and inspiring conversation with you. We wish you the best. And of course, I want to thank the team at Supply Chain Now, Natalie, Amanda, Clay. Without you guys, this, of course, would not be possible. The audience, without you guys, none of this would be possible. So please, if you enjoyed these conversations and if you like to kind of continue the dialogue about purpose-driven organizations like GoodSteps, and talking to owners like Alice Brown that are really changing the world and making it a better place, please just follow us, join us next time. And this has been a pleasure. Thank you very much to everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you
so much, guys.
See you guys.